So I have just put the color wheel stamp onto the acrylic block. You'll see there's a slight overhang, which is absolutely fine. Nothing wrong with it. It will still stamp it beautifully. Just make sure you're stamping on a straight surface. I have a bit of a bent page situation, so what I will do is just kind of push it like that. Make sure I have a straight page to work on, and there you go. All is good. If you stamp this in black ink, it all will be more visible, of course. So you do you. So we have got 16 color options here. So what I'm gonna do is just start mixing things. Whatever I fancy, it doesn't have to be anything precise. The idea is that I just experiment with swatches. If one color goes accidentally into the other one, you know, no stressing. So I'm going to add a little bit of this red here. And we get a gray because they both neutralize each other. Depends how much you add of it. You can go more towards gray, or like here we have a bit of a teal coming through as well. Okay, so let's see what happens if we add a tiny bit of this spring green into it. So the spring green has now become an interesting color where it's got a little bit of character. It's a little bit more muted, and there will be some granulation from the cobalt coming through. Okay, so let's see, let's take this dark color, which we only need a little bit of because it's very intense, and let's try, I don't know, let's go for this one, which is that kind of like a Quinacridone gold type of color. So here there won't be any granulation because perylene green is a very smooth color. And then let's go into this lovely Quinacridone gold. And that becomes interesting. Oh wow, look at that. Can you see what's happening? Isn't that a beautiful effect where it's just pushing the color? So this is a very pushy color. There has to be a pigment 150 in there because it tends to push, and then on the outside is the ring of cobalt, the cobalt turquoise or the teal. Okay, so far very interesting, very beautiful muted color palette. So we're taking these bright colors, but because we have loads of neutrals here, particularly the Quinacridone golds and the burnt siennas, we can very quickly create an interesting color palette. So let's go into this mix with a bit of sub green and see what happens. Hasn't really changed it that much. So into it, I will then bring in some of this color here. So this is kind of like an olive green. Okay, let's see what happens if we add that perylene scarlet into here. So we now get like a reddish brown. we had an interesting conversation about colors that people don't like in one of the latest videos. And it's interesting how everyone perceives color in different ways. So a color that may put one at discomfort, another person might find really beautiful. These sort of colors I didn't used to appreciate. This would be more of the colors that I would find interesting in the beginning of my watercolor journey. So something that I could take out of a tube and, you know, go with it. But now, yeah, this is the pushy color here. Look at that. Oh, that's a beautiful color I got. But now I really do find that my color palette has become more, shall I say, sophisticated? That's our favorite word, sophisticated. It's quite funny. And yeah, look at that. It's just pushing all this big puddle of water, just boom, off it went. What happens if we add a bit of red into this color here? We should get a color similar to Quinacridone Sienna by Daniel Smith, but this is more of a muted version. Okay, I find these colors here very, very beautiful. And let's see, I'm just gonna add more yellow into this color. And that will be a more creamier mix up than this, because we don't have any of the cobalt teal in there. So it depends what you're working on. If you're working on, like, for example, leaves that need a bit of texture, you might find that adding cobalt teal or blue, or whichever version of the cobalt you like, into there, that will create a natural texture by granulating and pigment separating. But of course, if you want to achieve a very smooth color lay, then in that case that would not be a color you would want. All right, let's see, let's add a bit of this color into here. Just mix them all together a little bit. So you could change this color wheel according to your liking. You could go more into the red direction because we have red and oranges here, or you can go maybe even into more kind of gray colors, or you can see how many different teal versions you could mix up. I currently am into this sort of chartreuse type of color, so this is why my color wheel predominantly has these colors. But I want to experiment a little bit more with the teal. I don't have that much left here, so I'm just gonna try and mix up something, maybe together with these colors. Let's see what we get. There we go. Maybe to touch a little bit of this darker color into that, seeing what happens. And when the colors run into one another on this color wheel, I don't seem to mind it that much, because I like seeing what will happen when these colors also mingle together. So let's add, I don't know, let's add a little bit of this yellow into here. And then, gold green. Let's do a little bit of gold green. Gold green with, let's try this Quinacridone gold here, or Indian yellow. This is a very nice color. Okay, so we have a variety here. I have to say this red is really standing out, so if I didn't have it, I'd be much happier. So let's see if I can try and put something over it once this dries. Something that would stand out more. Maybe like a brown, but just not too red. So let's go into this Mars brown. And see if we add a bit of touch of the green into that. And make it like a olive green. I think that would work nicely. It might give us some interesting pigment separation because of the Mars brown. And it's also dark enough to cover up the color underneath. So I think I am much happier this way, even though it's now popping out a little bit, but at least it kind of guides us towards these colors here. So it works well, in my opinion. If I had another color similar to that, it might just then be kind of 3 colors too close together. So now we'll wait until everything dries naturally, which will take a little moment, because when you're working with granulating colors such as cobalts or Mars colors, they have a lot of dense, coarse pigments. And so what happens is if you start blowing with heat onto them, trying to speed up the drying process, it will guide those particles into directions and change the natural way of them settling down. So it is recommended to try and wait for a more natural drying process. So what you can also do is have like a little study, and what I have done now is I've taken this little round swatch element and I stamped it 4 times here. And that is to say that, having done this exercise, which colors did I think were most significant in achieving something interesting? So for me personally, this nickel azo was a very good color, because what it did is, I'm going to now swatch it out from the palette, from the Schmincke palette. This is the transparent yellow that I mentioned before. And so to me, this color really creates a lovely lift. So it's like bringing sunshine to any color mix. It has this beautiful glow, and it can create a lot of interesting things. Now, although it was quite pushy in the tray or in the palette, you wouldn't experience it once it is on paper. So it does all the pushing on the palette, but once you mix it up and add it onto your paper, it sort of doesn't do too much of it. Then the colors that I really also felt were quite significant is this cobalt turquoise, but it can be, like we said, cobalt teal or any color of that sort. It just changes the tone slightly as it is straight from the pan, but once it's in a mix, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference of that light tonal change. Another color that I felt was really useful is this chartreuse. So like I said, not many brands have this color, and I have a little surprise up my sleeve, which I can't reveal just yet, but stay tuned about this color. So this color, what it does is similar to nickel azo. It creates a lovely brightness, but also because it has that juiciness about, it actually can substitute a yellow altogether in a color wheel when you're mixing and when you need to use the primary colors. I quite often like to substitute the yellow with the chartreuse. Again, more on that soon. And then Earthy Green is a color that will very quickly get us to a darker color without using a black. So black often adds, well, it depends what sort of a black. If we're talking about some of those interesting granulating mixes designed recently, then well, often designed by artists and added to brands, then that's a different ball game. But when it comes to adding just a regular black, ivory black or that sort of a black, it basically will dull the color. Even Mars brown will dull the color down. It will give you that lovely granulation, but it will dull it down. With this color, I find that it deepens it very quickly, very effectively, without dulling it down. And also, I'm not sure, just to recap about this color. So the cobalt turquoise of any sort, of any tint, of any tone, what it provides you with is very interesting granulation. So that's a must-have in any artist's palette, in my opinion. It just creates some really unique separation of pigments, and it can be mixed with reds, yellows, any color it can be mixed with, and just add that bit of pizzazz to it. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to write down all these things that we just mentioned. So I have like a little study in my sketchbook, and then I will show you the close-ups of the dried colors, or mostly dried colors. So let's have a look at these beautiful colors that we mixed up, the earthy greens. Loads of interesting pigment separation and granulation happening here. Keeping in mind, this is not a thick watercolor paper, so it would look even more interesting and more detailed, but you can still pick up on certain things. I like this sketchbook because it's small and it's like a little experiment sketchbook where I just can fill a page quickly, just doing a few mixings like that, and it looks cute and I can refer to it later. But yeah, so if you do it on a thicker GSM paper with maybe even texture like cold press, you'll see even more of the granulation come through. There's some interesting pigment separation from the cobalt turquoise coming through here. And of course, these sort of juicier colors are my favorites. And some of those that are kind of like mustardy colors, I also love them as well. And then let's have a closer look at the palette, or the color palette that we started off with. And I'd say it's a lovely bright color palette with also loads of earthier colors to mute things down, so you can create a variety of different color spectrums. And then we have the brightness, the granulation, freshness and darkness. So these two are similar in the way that they lift the color, they bring brightness and freshness to it, whereas this is more of a warm toned color and this is more of a fresh toned color, so it doesn't have as much warmth as this one, and so therefore they provide slightly different mixing properties to the colors. So I hope you found it really inspiring and useful. Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. Click the like button the notification button, all the good stuff. Oh, and by the way, there's also a new thing. Well, it's new for me. It's a feature that has been available for a while, but I only added this button to my channel the other day. It's a thanks button, so I think if you find a video particularly useful and you feel like supporting this channel by doing a little donation, you can click on that. And so that you know, for transparency, 70% goes to the maker or the creator of the channel, and the 30% goes to YouTube. So that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon.